Our group is going to present on language barriers to gender in senior executive leadership. My name is Gail Hall, and I am going to present the introduction. Next. Women have made tremendous strides in leadership position despite the stereotypical behavior and inequity that they have faced in the workplace. Next. Studies have shown that women hold 25% of executive leadership positions in S&P and Fortune 500 firms, while their male counterpart holds the other 75%. Next. Studies have shown that women executive is equally innovative and intelligent as male executives. Next. Other studies have shown that women executives have done tremendously in the marketplace. They have held their own and their financial portfolios have been increasing extremely. Next. Despite the validity of the tests shown, studies have stated that women are continually facing issues in the workplace as they themselves try to break the glass ceiling. Thank you. I pass it on to my colleague Kira, who is going to discuss language of leadership.
Thank you, Gail. I'm Kira Bella, and I'm going to be speaking about the language of leadership. Clear communication is at the heart of any successful organization. Communication enables the understanding and trust necessary to encourage employees to follow a leader. Clear communication and collaboration is an essential ingredient for an organization's survival and success. Next, please. To be a successful leader, you must learn the language of leadership. Language usage as a catalyst for improving communication in a company's culture is frequently overlooked. Next, please. Organizational communication is the exchange of information among two or more individuals or groups within an organization that creates a common basis of understanding and feeling. Organizational culture is reinforced through language and intricately woven in expressing norms and standards of behavior in culture. Next slide, please. Women and men executives use language very differently. For example, women tend to pose more questions when communicating, while men use more directives. Women use more adverbs and conjunctions and speak in longer sentences, while men speak in shorter sentences and tend to curse more in the workplace. Women use more personal pronouns and negative emotion words, while men use more articles. By counting and categorizing words, much can be learned about what a person is thinking. Pronoun usage refers to a shared reality. The use of first-person singular has been associated with self-focus, while first-person plural is generally associated with a group identity. In the study conducted by Bryant University, women executives were interviewed between March 2009 and April 2015 from a wide range of companies covering a wide variety of topics. Their interviews focused on the journey that female executives took to get where they are today, and they spoke on what mistakes they feel like they made along the way. 14,000 text samples were collected, and data was compared between the general population of women and women executives. Fatima will now discuss the results of this study and what they mean.
Thank you, Kira. My name is Fatima, and I'm going to be covering the discussion portion of this study. This study's results definitely found marked differences between the language used by executive women and women in the general population. Female executives, for example, were found to use more social words. This is considered an indication of a dynamic thinker because it means that they consider other people more. Social words are also important to leaders because they're in a role that requires them to communicate with and motivate others. Female executives also use the second person pronoun you more often. This indicates that they're more comfortable giving directions and orders. Women of the general population tended to use more words denoting friends, family, and the home. This suggests that executive women have adapted to avoid using these words in an effort to remove themselves from traditional female role traps. Executive men and women have very similar vernaculars, except that executive men use more certainty words. But the more interesting finding in this study is that executive men and women both share a lot of words in common with men of the general population, but not with women of the general population. These three groups all use words that relate to money and occupation, and they similarly use less words that are related to family and home life and negative emotion words. Since the general population of women is the only group that has vastly different word choices, this trend shows us that women learn this language when they acquire executive roles. Communication accommodation theory suggests that a speaker adjusts his or her language to fit the context of the situation. This theory further postulates that the speaker's ability to adapt in this way is integral to the success of the communication itself. The result of this study leads us to believe that executive women have had to adapt their language to their roles significantly more than executive men have. Our textbook describes masculinity as the extent to which dominant values in a society emphasize aggressiveness and the acquisition of money, as opposed to the concern for people and relationships. And it sounds like executive women have felt the need to become more masculine in their professional roles. We can see many examples of this in social media that support this conclusion. One trend that's emerged recently is of videos that exemplify how women can write and speak more assertively. For example, how to be less complacent in emails. However, women have also experienced a backlash when they express themselves too aggressively. In fact, many female TikTok users have said that they sometimes send emails under fake male names in order to get away with being more assertive. Learning the language of leadership may be more difficult for women than it is for men because of social conventions and social conditioning. The hope, however, is that understanding these language barriers can help us increase leadership opportunities for women in the future. Thank you, and now I'm going to be passing over to Grace, who will be discussing the supporting article.
Thank you, Fatima. My name is Grace Yoon, and I will be discussing an article in support of this study. The title of the article is Gender-Based Barriers to Senior Management Positions, Understanding the Scarcity of Female CEOs. Next slide, please. As mentioned before, the glass ceiling is a metaphor which describes an invisible barrier. In 1995, the Federal Glass Ceiling Commission stated that it may be decades before there is any significant change in the percentage of females at a senior management level. This article then further expands on how the glass ceiling is not one, but rather multiple ceilings of gender bias in both overt and covert ways. Next slide, please. For example, there are gender imbalances, stereotyping, preferred leadership style, mentality of the old boy network, and lastly, linguistic styles. Due to these barriers, it limits the advancement in position for females. Next slide, please. Focusing on the linguistic style of females, there is a psychological predicament called behavior double binds. This is a behavioral norm where a person cannot win no matter what she does. For example, if a woman were to take on a more aggressive style of leadership, simply mimicking male behavior, then she can be perceived as being too abrasive, but it's normal for men. It's a lose-lose situation. This also brings us to the issue of selective perception and what was mentioned previously with the social media trend. Next slide, please. This is further evidenced when a Washington Post reporter described Canadian Prime Minister Kim Campbell as brittle, defensive, and haughty. These adjectives were used to describe her, quote, steadiness and fire. One would think that this would be a positive attribute, but this is where we see behavior double bind. Because she was calm, she was judged negatively. This is interesting because the article was to announce her victory. Next slide, please. All of these barriers are slow to change, especially the old boy network and stereotyping. So women have the most control in being themselves in terms of how they dress, their tone, pitch of voice, and language, and possibly speaking with a less questioning attitude. But we wonder if this is enough to increase the percentage of women CEOs in the near future. Next slide, please. That leads us to our focus question. How can women balance the need to adopt the language of leadership while managing perceptions of abrasiveness? Thank you.